Hello, hello, hello. This is a meaningful moment all the way from Tzfat, Israel. This is considered the most spiritual, mystical city. I'm the host, Rabbi Zevi Weinberg. I have a website called KabbalahWisdom.org. I really encourage you to check it out. Of course, Kabbalah Love. Check out KabbalahLove.org. Um, it's entirely free of charge. There's a book that you could buy, but amazing information which I've been privileged to get purely by the grace of God, and it's my privilege to share it. So, let me just make this a little bit more personal because I think what I'm going to share now is super, super, super important. I teach a class every day, kind of class in Jewish mysticism, and young men and very, very special, very mature people. And we were kind of discussing kind of the interplay. There's like this stupid, if you want to call it a battle, but there's always been a battle between, if you want to call it spiritual people or conservative people or religious people, and somewhat there's a lot of antagonism and the correct approach. And of course, I said, you must love everyone. And, what makes a person good or bad is their heart and the information that they hold in their head, much of it, coming through education or brainwashing. That's not what makes them good or bad. And then it becomes your obligation to teach. And this is a very important message that I'm going to share because, Alan Dershowitz, very, very famous, successful lawyer, he once spoke for Chabad. And some of the reporters that were there, they said to him, here you are, you're, famous, if you want to call it a liberal. Why are you speaking for this religious conservative organization? He said, if the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the head leader, every generation really has a Moses of the generation, a great saint. And I really encourage you to read his material. You can look Soul Liners, the Rebbe. You can look under the Rebbe. You can look under Toward a Meaningful Life. Amazing content. But he said, if the Rebbe taught me anything, and listen very carefully to what I'm going to say because it's perhaps the most important concept, is he taught me you can talk to people that don't agree with you. What's happened in our society today is it's not consciously, but it's subconsciously intentional. It's the breaking of love because the only truth in the world is love and unity. And there are people that have been broken. And I'm not here to talk politics, so this has nothing to do with politics whatsoever. But at the same time, you have to address the situation in order to fix the situation. Obama wrote a book called Dreams of My Father. Here is a child, clearly, this is his own words, Dreams of My Father, that's the title of his book, that felt abandoned by his father because he was abandoned by his father. So here's a person that has issues with people, issues with life, certainly issues with men. And therefore, people that have issues, I have a very wise sister, she says, hurt people hurt people. One of the things I was telling the boys in my class today was that when you are okay with yourself, if you have love for yourself, you have love for everyone else. When we're busy judging other people, you know why? It's because we're actually judging ourselves. There's self-judgment, sometimes leads to depression, shame, and then there's criticism. But criticism never affects, so many anti-Semites, unfortunately, trying to criticize the Jewish people. In fact, what are they doing? They're just trying to shame me or other people. But none of that actually affects me. You know why? Because I think, poor person, I feel bad for you. Whenever, as a rabbi, obviously looking Jewish, sometimes I'll get comments. And my reaction is I'm not upset. My reaction is I'm nice. I'm like, hi. Remember once I was in Kansas City, somebody said a comment, and I was like, hi. And they were like, oh, he's being nice to us. I've even been at times there were like protests, and I literally, I do this. I kill them with love. And I'll explain to you why in a second. Like, people, like, it's really very rude. Like, Arabs are coming into the Jewish community, and they're literally like making, and like, if my car is there and they want to pass, I'm always go ahead. And I'll tell you why I do this. And listen to this. It's I once had an interesting episode that I was at this fair basically. I had a stand, and some Muslims came, young Muslims, and they were really nice kids, and we were discussing. And we had a nice conversation. They left. And then another guy, a little older, and I could see right away he was trying to be antagonistic. And he goes, da da da. So there's no point in arguing with somebody that wants to argue because you can't win a conversation that's not about a conversation. And so I said to him, "Tell me, do you love me or do you hate me?" And he goes, "Well, you know the Palestinians." So I said to him, "I just want you to know that I love you." He put his head down and he walked away. There was another time, there was a protest against Dead Sea products somewhere in Brooklyn. And so a couple of Hasidim, religious Jews, came to like be the counter protest of the protest. There were mainly like two Arabs there and one or two other like liberals or kind of morons. And so, it became like a little antagonistic, like the Hasidic group arguing with. And I said to the Hasidic group, I said, "Look, guys, let's dance." So we started to dance, and literally, if you would have dropped a nuclear bomb, they would have been less surprised. They were shocked. They didn't know what to do with themselves. And the question is, why did I say to this guy, "I love you," and why did he walk away? Why did I say, "Let's dance," and why did they stop when we were dancing, but they liked arguing? And the answer is because they're messed up people. And messed up people, ultimately, what they're really looking for is love. And when I was able to tell this person, which is genuine, "I love you," he didn't have any more arguments because I settled the argument. I gave him what he really needed. And when we were dancing, you know what those Arabs really wanted? They really wanted love. I mean, I didn't, maybe if I was nicer, I would have said, "I love you," but I danced, I threw them off the game because they wanted us to argue with them. They want you to have the same problem that they have. Misery loves company. So before, and this is Pew polls, massive polls, before Obama was the president, America, just imagine a mountain for a second. You can look this up, topography of America. So over here were the Republicans, over here were the conservatives. By the time Obama was finished the presidency, over here were the left. Sorry, over here were the Republicans, over here were the Democrats. Right and left were like this close to each other. By the time Obama was finished, the left became radical left. It boggles the mind. And I actually understand it, but a Jew who supported Obama, basically they supported like all this anti-Semitism. Where did it come from? Thank God after the Holocaust, suddenly anti-Semitism was not in fashion anymore. But who made it fashionable? Because there's a difference between a fringe group that says something and the president of the United States, the leader that says something. So when Obama publicly starts to condemn Israel, publicly is, Israel, Martin Luther King, a black person, once wrote to Martin Luther King something against Israel. And Martin Luther King wrote back, and you can look this up, it's a public letter. He says, "I disagree with the people that are criticizing Israel." He says, "Why can't the Jews have a state of their own?" He says, "This is anti-Semitism." In other words, what's really going on is that people can't handle the Jewish people. And Einstein actually addressed this. Einstein was in Germany, and a German reporter once said to him, "So, Mr. Einstein, how do you feel about being a Jew now that you're getting kicked out of Germany?" He said, "Well, young man, I wish I wasn't born a Jew, but not for the reasons that you think. But when I see how Germany is treating the Jews, and I see how no other country is protesting, I wish I wasn't born a Jew so I could have chosen to become a Jew." Einstein said, what were the Germans against? A person doesn't do anything without a motivation. If I go to my refrigerator, I have a motivation. What's my motivation? Well, either I'm hungry or I'm bored. My wife asked me to get her some food. You don't get out of this chair without a motivation, right? Even me speaking to you, I have a motivation. What exactly it is, I'm not going to self-analyze myself, but there's got to be a motivation. I'm doing it. I could be doing anything now. Why am I doing this? There has to be a motivation. And the same thing applies that if Hitler was motivated to murder so many people, not only Jews, 2 million gypsies, gays, go into hospitals, kill mental people, kill people with physical ailments. This guy was he was a murderer. He was a sadist. That's what he was. But the question is, from a psychological, it's very difficult for people to think about this because it's so dark. They don't want to think about it. Oh, there was this monster. But actually think about it psychologically. I'm going to say something which might be difficult to hear, but he wasn't completely without feelings. Hitler had a Jewish commander. He was in the army. He had a Jewish commander when he was kind of making all these problems for the Jews. The Jewish commander actually, basically calls him up and he gives him a visa to leave Germany. So that means he wasn't completely without a sensitivity to emotions. And yet, what happened to his emotions? Britain actually sent a spy to understand, okay, this guy came and he was like, who is this guy? Now, the British, and in fact the whole world, to their utter infamy, didn't do anything about him. People understood that Germany has a problem. They have an ego problem. And there was something called the Treaty of Versailles. In the Treaty of Versailles, the Germans were not allowed to build an army. But they ignored that. Chamberlain, who was a prime minister at the time, came back with this document, peace in my hands. I spoke to Mr. Hitler. Everything's okay, because nobody wants to deal with evil until the bombs start to fall. And then they say to Churchill, do us a favor, save us. And then as soon as the war is over, they're like, please get out of here. Because people don't like when do people vote in Republicans? When they are in danger, when Osama bin Laden drops a 9/11 bomb or something. But when people are not in danger, they don't like the Republicans. They like the Democrats. You know why? Because Democrats let you do whatever you want to do. So it's when you're in danger, you need protection. You go to the protection. But when you're in safety, because the protection gave you protection, what do? Well, you go, I don't want protection now. I want to do whatever I want. So you see how there's this yin and yang between Democrats and Republicans. So getting back to the point, what did Hitler want? What was bothering him about the Jewish people? So Einstein, who was there at the time, and he was obviously smarter than you and me, maybe not you, Einstein said, the Germans couldn't be against the Jews. The Jews are from a race. That was the official thing. Jews are from a race. We don't like this race. Because Jews come from all races. I live in Israel. There are black Jews, there are white Jews, there are every colored Jew. But he said the one thing that all Jews have in common is a sense of social justice. Social justice, they care about people. And that was what Hitler didn't want. I was at Auschwitz and I saw on the wall, it was written, he says, we want to, I forgot the exact line, but we want to bring up a barbarian tribe. And that's something he understood. He said, the world cannot be a savage place as long as the Jews are here. The Jews are the conscience of the world. And therefore he wanted to kill all the Jews. He wanted savagery, just like the Arabs. They want the world to be a savage place. I saw this amazing thing. This left-wing, I guess when it was still okay to do this, left-wing reporter goes into Gaza, it was run by Hamas, and you see this parade with all these, they're dressed in green, and this father is holding this, precious little girl, and dressed up in a suicide. Now, when these kids are born, this guy who converted to Judaism, he was brought up there, and right away they put a knife to kill the Jews. Their whole life is about telling the kids to kill Jews. And so this guy goes to this Hamas member. He says, you want your kid to become a suicide bomber, to kill herself, to kill Jews? And he says, yeah, don't you want that for your kid? He goes, no. And listen carefully to what the guy said. He goes, what do you mean, no? Now, most people can't understand that. Why would he say, what do you mean, no? Why does he want his kid to kill Jews, first of all, which will kill her? Reminiscent of what Golda Meir said, that there will be peace in Israel when the Arabs love their children more than they hate the Jews. But most importantly, what was he so upset if the Jew doesn't want, if I don't want my son to kill you, what do you care? Don't you want to live? The answer is the perception of reality that happens, because every single person lives in this game theory. Many, many Nobel Prizes have been won on this concept. And the concept is that basically either people see each other as allies or as enemies. And so to see each other as allies, I remember speaking to this guy who was the head of the gang. He actually burnt down the prison. He was the head of the Latino gang in the prison. And if I may say, I don't judge people, because the reason I don't judge people is because I know people are multifaceted. If I see somebody and the guy says, I was a gang member or I was this, I can appreciate the fact, and this is what he told me, he says, we didn't grow up like you. It was eat or be eaten. Now, what happens is, and I met this guy, he was a very smart guy, he was a neurosurgeon, long story short, but he says to me, this is true, it's completely true. He says, you're a nice guy, he tells me. He says, but If circumstances were different, you wouldn't be such a nice guy. And I'm going to say this openly, so I'm not proud of what I'm saying. But there were times in my life that I was not a nice guy. Right now, I'm a pretty nice guy. But you know why I'm a nice guy? Because the circumstances that are surrounding me are allowing me to be nice. But you know what happens when I'm hungry? What happens when you're hungry? What happens when the circumstances around us create misery? What happens is we become jealous of people that are not miserable. And that's why there's bullying in the world. If you were ever hurt, and I'm sorry if that happened to you, I'm sorry that I and other people didn't save you, but the point is, if you were ever hurt, you know why you were hurt? Not because you did something wrong. You were hurt because somebody was hurting and they were jealous that you were not. It's just that simple. The thing that hurts us most is anxiety. Many people are suffering from anxiety. Anxiety really hurts. I went through a time of anxiety in my life, and thank God, mainly through the wisdom of Hasidus, and again, circumstances really favored me. I was able to come out of anxiety, but it went through years. I wouldn't wish what I went through on my worst enemy, literally. And there are people that I really hate them, or I should say I don't hate them, I hate their behavior. Right? Terrorists, I really hate their behavior. And even though I hate their behavior so much, I still wouldn't wish that level of pain upon any human being in the world. It's torture. It's constant 24/7 torture. You wake up in pain, you go to sleep in pain. It's real pain. And the reason I'm saying this is because apart from the fact that there's a lot of growth in that, and in retrospect, I wouldn't give that up because it made me who I am. I met this person and said, they went through a really difficult life. And they said, well, I wouldn't give that up. They were happy. And I said, how are you so happy? They're like, well, this is what made me into me. It's true. And the reason I'm stopping for a moment is because we can really heal ourselves. If you could understand this, you couldn't get, when the Messiah is about to come, and when he's going to come, God is going to say, the Messiah is ultimately God, he's going to say, oh, we're going to say, thank you, God, that you tortured us. Really? That you tortured us? Maybe you shouldn't have tortured us. The answer is no, because you couldn't have gone from nursery school to graduate school without some suffering. Nobody grows. Jung said there's no birth of consciousness except through pain. You cannot grow without, because when we're young, we're like in this bubble, the time-space zone, and then we're like born into reality. And then what happens is we begin to grow. And the growth is really the sense of self. Your mother feeds you and you become happy. But then what happens is you're literally a little bit illusional about I'm this big shot. And it's not even something that's conscious. Like the Baal Shem Tov said, a person can be going, let's say, in a car. I'm just making the example a little bit more modern. And he's, I don't know, in the back seat, he's sleeping and there's a driver. And then the driver goes up onto a hill. And it continues. He wakes up. So you don't know that you're on a hill, but you're on a hill. People have an ego, but they don't even know that they have an ego. It's just their natural default. But the thing is that ego, that sense of grandeur, in a way, it keeps you within a certain trap because you're not really able to become infinite as long as you are finite, as long as you believe that this is your pride and joy, you. So something has to happen to break you. So people become jealous, and I think that's why God made jealousy in the world. It cracks the egg, and the shells splatter, and we splatter, and we don't know who we are anymore. And then slowly but surely, it took me years to just build yourself back, but now the person that I am now was consciously created. It's not the subconscious of when I was, basically, we create our identity by the time we're 5 years old. Like the 2-year-old already is tough little kiddo. So the point is that all of this information, by the time you're 6, you have complete identity, which is basically the identity of your parents or whatever it is. But you didn't make that identity. It's not your choice. It's not even your conscious. It's not even what you know is true. It's just what you assume is true. So you have to go through this breakage in order to basically get fixed. And piece by piece, part by part, we put it together, and eventually we have a story. But because God is infinite, because information is infinite, because experience is, because life is infinite, Baal Shem Tov says everything you see and hear is actually teaching you. You slowly but surely you learn more and more. And you become somebody that can learn more and more. Okay, so getting back to the story of what happened with Obama, and the reason there's anti-Semitism is because there's jealousy of happiness. So So he created that the left became radicals, vicious anti-Semitism, radical kind of black radical politics. This stuff is really, it's not about love, it's about hate. And the conservatives, to their credit, they did not go radical. They left the center and they went to the mid-center. And these are not my words, these are Pew polls, very serious. Rebecca Kimmel, I don't know if she's still the CEO of Pew, but I corresponded with her and she wrote to me that Mr. Pew said, tell the truth and trust the people. And it's kind of what they do. They tell the truth and they trust the people. So this information is very important information because most conservatives are actually independents and independently coming up with the same concept. Because if you think rationally, well, there's good and evil and be normal, and then we have this divide. Now, everything that I'm bringing out here is to bring out one point. Ultimately, what is life about? Life is about this process of growth that I've described. We come into this world, we don't know anything, and we assume that what we are being told is the truth. But if you do not question the truth, if you do not have one question, which is what is the truth? Somebody came up to me, I'm not going to describe their philosophy, but I knew their philosophy and I challenged their philosophy right away. And because I disagree with it. And I realized that this person, his whole life was taught this fake philosophy. And so all I could say to them is, you have to ask yourself a question, which is, what is the truth? And in order to ask yourself that question, you have to press delete. You have to delete every single thing you know and that you think is the truth. Because if you don't delete it, what's going to end up happening is that you're going to be stuck in a paradigm. Now, what is the chances? There are 30,000 versions of Christianity. That's one religion, 30,000 versions. 30,000 versions of Islam, right? Within Judaism, there's a lot of agreement on the law, but in terms of philosophy, I don't know, I'm sure you can get at least 10 different versions, right? I don't know, within Buddhism, there's got to be at least, I don't know, 100,000, at least 100,000 different philosophies. That's organized philosophy. Never mind individuals with their own philosophies. There's got to be at least, I don't know, 1 million different philosophies out there. And they're contradictory philosophies. So there's 1 million mistakes because at least 999,999 of them are wrong because there's only one truth. There's only one correct philosophy. And the only way you can get there is by asking one question. First, you got to delete everything you know. There was a great rabbi, Rabbi Zera, that he came from Babylonia and he came to Jerusalem and the level of study was higher. He fasted for 40 days praying to God that he should forget everything that he knows because he realized that for him to get to this higher level of consciousness, he has to step away from what he thinks is true. And if you have never doubted the truths you were born with, I grew up in a religious community, but there was a point that I thought it wasn't true. So I thought things were not true, and I went around looking for truth. Eventually, I came to the point where I couldn't find the truth. I thought, okay, maybe it's a rat race. And eventually, something resonated with me. Oh, wow, Judaism, or at least a part of Judaism, I see this is true. And then spirituality, I was able to discern truth, but it came from my discernment. If you don't press delete on what you were told as a child, you are not in the truth. I don't care what you've been brought up with. Even Judaism, even truth itself. You cannot be true if you don't see it through the perspective of the question, what is the truth? Because you have to be able to discern it for yourself, because not everything is the truth, even within Judaism. Okay, there's a time for love, there's a time for war, there's a time for building, there's time for destruction, there's time for everything. Everything has a context, right? Sometimes love is hate and sometimes hate is love. It depends. And you have to be able to apply your intelligence to the reality in front of you. And that can only happen if you press delete on everything you know and you begin with a question, which is, what is the objective truth? And so I really encourage you, and I mean, if I can say, this is what I have discovered, but again, you have to discover it for yourself, is that we are in an infinite, this is a very important word, we are in an infinite relationship with the infinite. Right? In the beginning, there was just the infinite. And because he's infinite, past, present, future is the same, and he foresaw you, he foresaw me, and he loves us. It's like, why do you have a kid? Because you love them. And because of that, he created the time space dimension that we live in within the 6 days of creation. He created the world, and he created the concealment of himself through everything that you see. That nature, the physical, conceals his existence, even though every moment really it's like a computer that's generating it all the time. But be that as it may, it's concealed. And then what did he do? He's waiting for the day that you say, what is the truth? And 62% of the world today believe they have a personal relationship with God, because through that question, somewhere along the line, God appears to you. But that's not the full truth, because he's unlimited. So it's just a ray of light. We are like a sponge that or like a chip that can get more and more data, more and more light. The beautiful thing about it's not just information, it's transformation. We are within infinite transformations, infinite growth. We all have a beautiful part in this world. This world is one. We're all interconnected. The tree, the person, we're all here for each other. We're all needing each other. And we all have a direct relationship. We're all finite creations of the infinite. We all have a part in his story is history. We all have a part in destiny in his story. And we all have an infinite ability. It's like a tree. We're rooted in faith and truth. Our inside always is expanding. We're learning, we're growing. And our fruits are the beautiful knowledge and the sensitivity that we gain. And I just want to conclude, if you are mistaken, there was a great rabbi. Please listen very carefully to this. We have one life and we can't screw it up. His name was Menachem Mendel of Kosk. He said, what's the difference between a lover of truth and a hater of falsehood? Think about that. Do you know the difference? What's the difference between a lover of love and a hater of hate? He says the lover of truth doesn't rest until he finds the truth. The hater of hate doesn't rest until he finds the hate. What Obama did to America was he taught people what's wrong. That is not a good leader. A good leader is teaching people what is right. Go to Lubavitch Rebbe, go to great leaders. If you have somebody, including yourself, that's teaching you what's wrong, including with you, that person is not true. They're coming from jealousy of love. It's like Voldemort. What was he jealous of? He was jealous of love. And it's all negativity. All of truth is positive. It is constructive. It is about building. It is about growing. When God put us in the Garden of Eden, what did he do? He said, La'avdil Hashem, your job is to make this more beautiful, protect the beauty, make it good, make it beautiful. But if all you're hearing, even in your own head, is what is wrong with yourself and with others, shut it off. Get rid of that voice. And so much of the media today, even today, I try not to stay away from the news. And even if I look at the headlines, never go into an article. It brings your energy down. It's all crap. It's all negative. So much negativity. Before Obama was in America, like people spit. Even Hillary Clinton put out a book called "It Takes a Village." Truth be told, it does take a village. She's right. People have to be there for each other. But the Republicans were like, "Oh my God, how could you say it takes a village? It's big government, right?" But their conversation, and she remember this on radio, she was like, no, it does take a village. She happens to be a very, very intelligent person. No matter what you say about her politics, she happens to be very clever. And the bottom line is, and listen to this carefully, they did not attack each other. They attacked an idea. They were saying big government. She was saying, no, we have to have a village. They had basic sense of respect. Respect is the word. And that is what Obama brought to America. The language of disrespect. And if you are one of those people that hates Trump, and I don't blame you because you've been hearing on the media nonstop, Trump. And it's literally, there's a neural pathway, they call it Trump derangement system. There's a neural pathway in your brain that whenever you hear that word Trump, I remember seeing this lady, her son was actually a conservative and she was not. And he said Trump, her face changed. Literally her face changed. It was like I say, some kind of horrific words, like a traumatic word, because all they've been hearing nonstop for years and years is negativity. So, but why did he become the president? And I want you to look this up. I want you to fact check this, because Obama, in his sadistic viciousness, he actually called him to a White House dinner. I think it was White House press dinner. And he gets up for 10 minutes. It's okay to make a joke, a 1 second joke, for 10 minutes with a video. of making fun of Trump. This guy's a sadist. He likes embarrassing people. So Trump, at the end of that, he says, I will become the next president of the United States. He did it to basically get his dignity back. And that is something that you and I have to be very careful about. There was a Gentile that once came to one of the greatest sages, Hillel, and he said to him, teach me the whole Torah while I stand on one foot. And he said to him, don't do to someone else that which you don't want them to do to you. Now, my friends, that's obvious. Why is that the whole Torah? It's a lot deeper, but it's a very deep thing. What is the one thing we don't want someone to do to us? To shame us. So we may never shame another person. In the Bible, it says you cannot use your words to hurt people. But what he brought in is a language of shaming. I call them the shamer in chief. And now you go into YouTube videos. I don't really look at my comments, but people are talking horrifically to each other. You wouldn't speak to your dog like that. Why are you talking to a human being like that? We cannot be senseless barbarians. Humans that have mouths, the mouths are here. The basics is don't disrespect another person, just like you don't want someone to disrespect you. We must give up the language of disrespect. It's not okay. And as you see in this video, I haven't shamed anyone. I haven't condemned them. Yes, I've talked about concepts and I've named somebody because I had to name this behavior. But the bottom line is we have to respect. Respect is the difference between good and evil. Respect between men and women. And all this liberalism, they think that that we are free, we respect. You don't respect women. Look at the internet. Look at pornography. They stand for pornography. Look at lewdness. That's not respect. Respect is actually what the conservatives do, which is let's get married. Let's not have sex before marriage. Let us actually have respectful relationships. Let us respect each other. Respect comes with boundaries. It comes with respect for yourself, respect for God. But this kind of, I'll do whatever I want, and then I can condemn anyone, and I can, basically try to create another Holocaust. That's not respect. That's evil. You understand? And so let's get back with the program. And in conclusion, if you're a Jew, there is a God in this world. And he came to us and he said, the only time, there are many religions, but the only religion that actually was witnessed by millions of people, those children, myself included, are here, written down in a book, celebrated. Some religions have 12. One, Muhammad says that the angel Gabriel spoke to him in a cave. Nobody knows if that's true. He says he was a prophet. He never made a prophecy. He never actually did a miracle, which was kind of the way that you knew somebody was a prophet. He said something would happen, and it came to pass. So maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I don't know. But one thing I do know is that the only time God came, and he says it's not going to change, was to the Jewish people, written in the Torah, which ironically everybody in Islam, as well as Christianity, so that most of the world believe that this actually happened. And God says, don't kill. You know what I mean? So suddenly to change that, and if you're a Muslim and you believe in jihad, well, I don't know what to tell you, because the only time that God actually came that is verifiable, he said, don't kill. And you believe that you should kill, right? So it doesn't make any sense. You have to ask yourself that question. Delete everything. You have a brain, start to think. What makes sense? What adds up? Because if it doesn't add up, you're on one of those 999,000 false paths, and you're dedicating your life not only to something that's not going to be good for you, but maybe you're going to end up in hell because you're going to be a murderer. So I just want to say to each and every person, I love you very much. You're very loved by God. He made this world because he loves us, and he wants us to think. Thinking is not going against God. Thinking, you can never overthink God. You can never outsmart God. You can never step on God. You can only get closer to him through your intelligence. Through your thinking, you can become more of yourself. God wants to be your partner, but you have to show up to this partnership. If you have a partner, you want your partner to do his best. The first thing he did in this world is he made us his partner. And he wants us to show up. And he'll be there. He'll give us a sign, and he'll give us information wherever you see and hear. He's giving us hints. As the Baal Shem Tov says, God talks in hints. And Einstein said, God is not malicious, he is subtle. But for crying out loud, don't shut off your brain. Use your head. That's the way to truly make the world a beautiful place. Thank you for watching this. And if this was meaningful to you, I beg of you, there's a lot of information here, a lot of ways that we're addressing the modern situation. This can help a lot of people. I didn't conclude a thought that God came at the Torah. If you're a Jew, there are 613 commandments. The Gentile, there's 7 laws of Noah. You can check that out. God wants us all, boils down to one thing: respect each other, respect God, respect yourself. Try to be good, try to be kind, and don't be mean. That's what it all boils down to. Good luck.